Some more stuff I've been thinking about. Do you ever wonder what on earth pastors do with their time? I know as a pre-pastor person, I certainly did. One of the things I try to do in my job is to make you all feel seen and heard within our community. And to that end, I try and contact every household in our church twice a year. During the spring, I'll send out an offer to either meet with you up for a short coffee or have a telephone conversation. And then in the fall, I send out a thing for prayer requests. And then after I send out with a prayer request from Monday to Friday, I pray for the things that you've asked me to pray for. Saturday, I pray all loosey-goosey, whatever I want. And then on Sundays, I pray for this whole church experience we're going to have together. It's taking a lot more time than it used to. About 18 months ago, we had 35 households in our community, and now we have 63. I am so delighted that other people are feeling at home in our church family. And, by the way, when I write to you and ask you if you want to meet up or for prayer items, I'm not remotely offended if you don't reply to me. I figure it's like I'm putting out some metaphorical bird seed, and if you want to have some, you can come and get it. If you don't want the bird seed, just leave it. I never feel like, oh, they're not writing back, maybe they don't like me, or whatever. I just figure you're not hungry right now for whatever I'm offering. You never need to say to me, Pamela, I'm so sorry I didn't reply to your email. It's my desire that everyone who comes to our church feels loved and seen. So if what I'm offering doesn't appeal to you, it's fine. And by the way, if I didn't contact you this last fall to ask you if you had any prayer requests, can you let me know? Because I'm not intentionally ignoring you, and I want to know that. So just so you know, I'm taking the month of February off. I'll be gone for 4 weeks. I've been doing this job at first by myself, and then with Andrea, and then with Paul for coming up 5 years now, and I just like some time to sit back and count my chickens or something like that anyway. Back in early December, I was not doing well. There was a bunch of unexpected, unpleasant things going on in my life, and I got just a wee bit depressed. The depression itself isn't actually that bad. The problem is I get so freaked out, so terrified of going back into a depression that I had about 20 years ago, that I just that's what upsets me more than the actual depression. So I wasn't suffering a lot, I was suffering a little bit. And so of course I thought to myself, Pamela, what a gift God has given to you through this suffering, a chance to learn and grow in your spirituality, because everyone knows that suffering leads to spiritual growth. Nope, that's not what I thought at all. You'd think I'd be thinking that by now, because I've gone through this enough times in my life previously, but I didn't. I just hated it. It was kind of disappointing, really. Wouldn't you hope that your pastor had the spiritual maturity to be at least a bit philosophical about her suffering? Nope. All I seemed able to do was just wait it out. Not gracefully, not with a little halo shining above my head. I just put my head down and tried not to be too mean to those people around me. And wait for it to pass, because it does pass. Eventually. Anyways, I don't know if I'll ever be able to bear suffering graciously. Probably not. But if you are suffering in one way or the other right now, I can assure you it will pass. When? I have no idea. But it will pass. So try and hang on until then. Number 2, things I've been thinking about. I read this poem recently that I loved, and I'd like to share it with you, and Paul's going to put it up on the screen, I think. Yes, he is. So you can follow along if you want. It's by Mary Oliver. All the quick notes most didn't have time to use before he entered the cloud boat are falling now from the beaks of finches that have gathered from the joyous summer into the hard winter. And like Mozart, they speak of nothing but light and delight. Though it is true, the heavy blades of the world are still pounding underneath. And this is what you can do too, maybe, if you live simply and with a lyrical heart in the cumbered neighborhoods, or even, as Mozart sometimes managed to, in a palace, offering tune after tune after tune, making some hard-hearted prince prudent and kind just by being happy. I love this idea. Maybe I needn't worry so much about what I'm accomplishing, and I'm doing whatever God sent me here to do. If all I need to do is transmit some joy, I'm up for that. Number 3, we went to Pamela Anderson's movie recently, The Last Showgirl, and I loved it. It tackled so many issues that I have been dealing with over the years. Things like what happens when you're no longer young and therefore don't have that undeniable natural evolutionary appeal of being young and fertile. That natural evolutionary appeal of youth is a kind of currency, especially for women, and that simply goes away as you get older. So are you worth less as a human being when you no longer have that appeal? But the really big question of the movie was, for me, how much should a mother sacrifice for her children? What does a mother owe to her children? Do fathers owe the same level of sacrifice to their children? Should a parent give up their chance to rigorously pursue their gifting to raise their children? Of course, you can work at a career of your choosing and raise children, but you can never give yourself over to your gifts, your desires, the way you can when you don't have children. My understanding was, when I was a child, that a good mother sacrificed everything for her children. So I didn't pursue a career, and I stayed home, and I even homeschooled our kids for a while. Am I sorry that I did that? I don't think so. I think our kids turned out pretty good. But I also realized that our kids might have turned out just as well if I hadn't stayed home with them. I was so lonely at home. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'm a wee bit extroverted. And being by myself all day with small children was really challenging for me. What did God want from me? I don't know. What did I want from me? I know I wanted to be the best mother I could. Did I achieve that? I don't know. I certainly tried. But in the process of trying that hard to sacrifice, I sublimated all sorts of difficult feelings. How can you sort out the societal expectations from your own, from the ideas that you were taught when you were young, or from the latest parenting expert on the internet? Sometimes I wonder if society almost inadvertently lies to women. You know, when our first baby was born, I got sent all these cards of this soft, gentle mother gazing at her newborn baby, and I gotta tell you, my experience was not like that. And I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? Why are other people seem to be experiencing this and not me? When I was a little girl, the show Leave It to Beaver, you ever seen that? Was still on the air. And if you've seen Beaver's mom in that show, I think June Cleaver, maybe that's what I was sort of aiming for, something like that. I even had a good friend named Beaver. In my family of origin, his real name was Paul. In my family of origin, the concept of doing your duty, no matter what the cost, was highly prized. And I got a lot of positive feedback from my dad for doing my duty as a mother, as he saw it anyway. Is it reasonable to think that a mother can figure out what a reasonable amount of sacrifice to her family is when she doesn't know what the experience of motherhood is even like? Someone said to me the other day that she's realizing that the goal of parenting isn't really to have the perfect child or do the perfect thing. The goal is for that parent to learn what it means to be a parent and move into that role in their own authentic way. Gosh, what a wise thing to say. I never extended myself that kind of mercy. I spent my time thinking about what a failure I was because I wasn't meeting my unreasonable expectations of myself. So what is a perfect parent? In my mind, it's some delusional idea that each person forms from their own upbringing and expectations of people around you. Obviously, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. All of us, whatever we choose to do in life, need support from our communities. And that's what one of the things this church is here for, to try and support you and any small children you happen to acquire as you go through life. Number 3, my sister has figured out an incredible chemical-free way to cure insomnia. She told me what she does is she's got this app, and it's of somebody reading the Bible out loud, okay? And she says, I don't know why, but whenever I hear someone reading the Bible out loud, my mind just switches off, and I can go to sleep. She told me that when she was a little girl sitting in church, she used to have fantasies about kidnappers breaking into the church and taking her, right? And so I said to her, well, what happened in your fantasy when the kidnappers took you? And she said, I don't know, that didn't matter. Just all that mattered was I wasn't sitting in church listening to people read the Bible anymore. When our 3-year-old grandson couldn't sleep recently, he came and woke up his mom in the middle of the night and asked her to make him a raccoon. Make him a raccoon. So she was very confused. Why did he suddenly want to be a raccoon? Why was he waking her up in the middle of the night to tell her this? And finally, she recalled that when she had put him to bed that night, she had tucked all the blankets in tightly around him and said, I'm making you a cocoon. So he was waking her up to ask her to make him a cocoon, not a raccoon. Number 4, I spend at least some of my energy in life wishing that things were different than they were. Did I ever tell you about the time that my mom put up wallpaper in my bedroom? I asked her to put up wallpaper, and she graciously agreed to do that. And being the thrifty soul that she was, she went to the wallpaper store and found some wallpaper of brown 3-masted sailing ships. Okay? It was pretty ugly, but in her mind, the ugliness was redeemed by the fact that it cost so little. Please remember that my father was a doctor, and finances were of no concern. Anyway, my mom had never put up wallpaper before, so she just cut strips like that fit on the wall and put them up. So when she put them up, the ships did not match. The ships were sort of like, here was one half of the ship and the other half of the ship was like that. And my mom prized efficiency and frugality over unimportant details like ships' halves matching up on the wallpaper. And I spent a lot of time as a child lying in bed in my mind trying to get those stupid ships to line up. As a number 1 on the Enneagram, I feel like I spend a lot of intellectual and emotional energy trying to make things I perceive in my life to be imperfect, to be perfect. Of course, it never works. But it's not for lack of trying on my part. When I was talking to my spiritual mentor the other day, she suggested that I just accept a situation that's in my life, that I don't like, rather than railing about it every time I come to visit her. The moment she suggested that, I just felt this wave of freedom wash over me. That's a good sign. God always wants us to have more freedom in our lives. And so when you are thinking about stuff like that and you have a sense of freedom, that can be a real sign that God is speaking to you. So that's what I've been doing recently. Every time I feel frustrated about that particular situation, I let myself think, give it up. You've let that go. Is it working? Sort of. I go through the exercise of letting it go, but then secretly, because I'm sure God won't think of this, I hope that when God sees that I'm giving it up, then God will realize that it's really okay for me to have that thing and give it to me after all. I also know, though, I'm experiencing kind of an underlying sense of grief having to give up this thing that I want. What I know for sure is that the Creator does not come to us as we expect. Surprisingly, the Spirit does not move at my command. I can spend my time thinking up scenarios for how God could change things, how God could intervene in this situation. But the truth is, God almost never moves in the way that I have planned out for God. Salvation almost always comes in another form. I'm expecting, hoping that God will intervene in one way, and it usually comes in another. We expect a warrior king to set things right, and God sends a baby in a manger. What good is that? We expect wrongs to be punished, and God extends grace and mercy to all. I do have to admit, though, that God's ideas are usually better than mine. But the great thing about this whole way I stumble through life is the reality that we do not come to God by doing it right. Please believe me on this. We come to God by doing it wrong. Any person who has spent any time pursuing God knows this to be true. My feeble gestures of surrender to God can open up my mind and heart to new possibilities, to have hope. What is hope? My favorite definition of hope is openness to surprise. Hope is openness to surprise. So the theory is, instead of continuing to be dissatisfied with a particular situation in my life, like having mismatched brown sailing ship wallpaper, I spend my energy looking around for what God might have in wait for me. It's not a particularly pleasant process, but I also know the truth that it's in doing life wrong, making mistakes, being rejected, experiencing pain, that we are led to full reliance on God. Generally, I spend a lot more time talking to God when I'm upset. If you read through my prayer journals, you'd think my life was awful, because I almost never write in my prayer journals when I'm happy. My journal tells a story of grief and misery, but it's not really what my life is like. I really like my life for the most part. Believe me, I wish this whole flailing around thing wasn't necessary. But all I can tell you at this point in my life's journey is that God has let me do so many things wrong so I could fully experience how God can do things so utterly right. Number 5. Last night, Paul and I were driving home from somewhere on the highway, about 9 p.m., and there was a car a ways up ahead of us, and I'll do this. No, I can't. Then you can't see. Okay, we're driving along like this. No, she's here. We're here. And then all of a sudden, the car just like flies across both lanes, smashes into the median, and sort of skids along the median to a stop. Okay? So we stopped and went to see her, and I sat with her in her car. She was okay. I sat with her in the car while all the emergency vehicles arrived. 1 police car, 2 fire trucks, 3 ambulances. It was very exciting. And so she was crying, and I asked her if she was in a lot of pain, and she said, no, my shoulder's hurting a bit from where I hit the side, but the airbags had come off and stuff like that. So she said, I'm not really hurt. The reason she was crying was that she was living in her car at the moment. And she said, if my car is totaled and they tow it away tonight, I have nowhere to stay. She obviously wasn't impaired in any way. She said she knew that something was wrong with the car, with that thing that attaches the wheel to the car thing. And she'd been meaning to get that fixed, but she hadn't had the money to do it. And it also happened to be her birthday, she told me, and she also just found out that her husband cheated on her. She said, it's been a bad week. Folks, there's nothing like a car accident to put the rest of our lives into perspective. Sure, I have suffering in my life, but this woman's troubles put my troubles in perspective. I talked to the police and they told me that they had agreed that they would tow her car to her friend's house, not to the wrecking yard, so then she would have a place to stay. Okay, Barry and Medora, can you hand out those papers? Thanks. What I'm handing out right now, actually they're handing out, is called a finger labyrinth. It's just a way to help you pray, a kind of way. I wish it was magical, but it's not. The point of praying, any kind of praying, is to spend some time with God somehow. You can only get to know someone, some being, by spending time with them, and that principle works with God. If you want to get to know God, someone infinitely worth knowing, you need to spend time with them. And so this is one way to do that. So the point of using something like a labyrinth is to keep your mind on the present moment. It's much harder for your mind to drift off into the past or the future when it has a simple task to do, like tracing something with your finger. Okay, shall we try it? And like I've said to you many times in the past when I introduce another spiritual practice, be brave. Just try it. You can always hate it afterwards. Okay, let's go. So I invite you right now to think of something in your life that is concerning you, is worrying you, you've been thinking about. Some part of your life you're not happy with. And metaphorically, place that in the center of the labyrinth, okay? And then in a minute, starting at the beginning of the maze with your finger, just follow it along, go through it. And just try and be open to whatever thoughts come into your head. Look for surprises. And when you get all the way to the middle of the maze, the labyrinth, try and go slowly. When you get all the way to the middle, just try and see if that thing that you put in the middle looks at all different to you. And then slowly trace out again, all the while listening for surprises from God. There is absolutely no way you can do this wrong, okay? So we're going to have about 3 minutes of silence right now. And you can try out the finger labyrinth if you want to. And you'll know the time is up because the band will start to play the last song. Okay? So we'll have 3 minutes of silence right now. And if you want, you can try the finger labyrinth.